quick reminder, please make sure you're subscribed. Thank you. Story 1. I drove across town for a used PlayStation 4 game listed at $15. The seller walked out holding the case between his fingers like he was presenting a diamond. The disc looked shiny, but not the kind of shine that comes from being well cared for. It looked like he had just wiped it with his shirt right before I arrived. While I checked it for scratches, he announced that the price had gone up. According to him, the disc had above average shimmer. He explained this like he was describing rare gemstones. He said collectors appreciate premium reflection and that I should feel lucky he wasn't charging more. I told him we agreed on 15. He insisted that shine increases value and that I should respect the luxury gloss. It's a PlayStation 4 game, not a collectible antique. The shine was from his sleeve. I handed it back and left. The listing now says Shiny Edition, price firm. Story 2. I went to pick up a couch that was listed as like new, no pets, no smoke. The moment I stepped into the house, the dog smell hit me like a warm wall. 3 massive dogs were sprawled across the couch, shedding like they were being paid for it. I mentioned the no pets part of the listing. The woman looked at me like I was the confused one and said her dogs don't count because they're family, not pets. One stood up, shook itself, and released a snow cloud of fur straight into the air. She said the fur was proof the couch is loved. I left before the dogs could adopt me too. Story 3. I went to buy sneakers the seller claimed were brand new. He had them displayed in the trunk of his car on a towel like he was running a tiny shoe boutique. Before I could touch them, he told me there was a trying on fee. $5. Just to put them on my feet. He said every foot reduces the energy value of the shoe and that true collectors already know their size spiritually. The shoes were creased, dirty, and definitely not new. I told him I wasn't paying a fee. He waved me off like I had wasted his sacred time. Story 4. I wanted a small fridge for my office. The listing said, works great, which already made me suspicious. When I arrived, the seller opened the door proudly, like he was revealing a prize. The top shelf was cold. The bottom shelf felt warm enough to proof bread. The divider was cracked and hanging sideways. He explained that the fridge had dual climates and that the warm area was perfect for snacks that enjoy room temperature living. I told him fridges are supposed to cool everything inside. He answered that I was thinking too traditionally and should appreciate the flexible temperature options. I walked away while he called after me that I was missing out on a 2-in-1 system. Story 5. A mattress was advertised as brand new, never slept on, only staged. When I arrived, it was leaning in a storage unit with stains that absolutely did not come from staging. Some faint, some very not faint. The seller insisted it was still new because lying down doesn't count unless dreaming happens. I didn't even argue, I just left him and his philosophical mattress behind. Story 6. I found a listing for free dirt. Perfect, I needed some for my yard. The seller told me to bring a truck, said there was plenty. When I arrived, there was no dirt pile at all. He walked me to the backyard and pointed at the ground. The dirt was still in the ground. He expected me to dig up half his yard myself. He said he didn't mention the digging in the listing because the right people will understand the opportunity. He even offered me a rusty shovel. I told him I needed loose dirt, not a landscaping job. He tried to sweeten the deal by offering a few vintage rocks if I dug faster. Story 7. I saw a listing for a small car that looked suspiciously cheap, but not cheap enough to scream scam. The description said, excellent condition, no issues. When I arrived, the seller already had the engine running, which is always a sign they're hiding something. I got in, and the first thing I noticed was a strip of black electrical tape running straight across the dashboard where all the warning lights should be. Not subtle at all. A perfect line of tape covering exactly the spot you'd want to see. I lifted the corner and immediately saw an engine light, an airbag light, and something blinking so fast it looked like Morse code for help. The seller snatched the tape and told me not to touch it because the lights stress him out. I said the lights exist for a reason. He told me that if you can't see a problem, then the problem doesn't exist. I thanked him for his time, got out, and the car wheezed like it was offended. Story 8. There was a listing for an empty gaming console box selling for almost the price of an actual used console. The title said, collector's item. I assumed the seller made a mistake, so I messaged them. They quickly corrected me and said the price was accurate. I asked why an empty cardboard box cost that much. The seller explained that the packaging market is booming and that collectors want complete sets, even if they don't own the console. They said the box had rare shelf presence, which is the most dramatic way I've ever heard someone describe cardboard. When I pointed out that people could buy the console with a box for not much more, they said those buyers don't understand investment potential. I didn't go see it in person. I did check the listing a week later, and the seller raised the price by another $20 because demand increases daily. Story 9. I found a desk listed for a fair price. No damage, sturdy wood, nothing strange. When I arrived, everything looked good, and I was about to hand over the money. That's when the seller asked if I had social media. I told them yes, and they said the price only applied if I posted a photo of the desk in my home and tagged their small business account. They called it a promotional discount. If I refused, the price would go up by 20%. They even started planning the caption for me. They wanted something like amazing quality and deals from this local seller. I told them I'm not paying extra just because I don't want to become their unpaid marketing team. They tried lowering the promotional requirements, asking for only 2 photos and 1 story post. I walked away. The listing now says not for shy people. Story 10. I messaged someone about a simple floor lamp. The seller seemed normal through text and even thanked me for being punctual when I arrived. The lamp worked fine and the agreed price was cheap. I pulled out cash and suddenly he refused it. He only accepted payment in cryptocurrency. Not even a normal coin. Something obscure with a name that sounded like a fake pirate ship. He pulled out his phone and started explaining how I could easily buy this coin using 3 different apps, and how if I paid him that way, both the lamp and the coin could grow in value together. I told him I didn't want to join a financial partnership over a crooked lampshade. He said cash is dead energy and that fiat currency is for people scared of the future. I thanked him, got in my car, and he yelled after me that I was missing a wealth window. Story 11. Someone posted a microwave from the 1980s and described it as better than modern junk. The thing was huge, beige, and looked like it could survive a house fire. The seller said it was built like a tank and would last forever. They put a bowl of water inside to show me it worked. The microwave sounded like a jet engine and made every light in the house flicker. After a full minute, the water was still room temperature. The seller blamed the bowl and said some bowls aren't compatible with vintage radiation. They told me modern microwaves are too sensitive and that this one cooks food in its own time. I decided I'm okay with sensitive microwaves that heat food before the next ice age. Story 12. There was a listing for a luxury dog bed, small fee. The photos made it look like a 5-star dog hotel pillow. When I arrived, the seller explained the small fee wasn't a purchase price. It was a weekly rental fee. They ran a dog bed subscription service. You rent the bed, use it, and return it in good condition or pay late fees. I asked why anyone would rent a dog bed. They said subscription models are the future of everything and that people already subscribe to TV, apps, and groceries. I pictured myself explaining to a confused dog why its bed suddenly disappears every month and decided to keep my dignity. Story 13. I answered a listing for free dirt. I expected a pile, maybe a mound, the usual. The seller walked me to the backyard and showed me his lawn. That was the free dirt, still in the ground. He expected me to dig it up myself. Not a small amount either, it was half the yard. He said he didn't mention the digging because real dirt lovers don't mind the labour. He offered me a rusted shovel and said if I took more than 10 wheelbarrows, he'd throw in some vintage rocks. I left him with his untouched yard and his archaeological dreams. Story 14. I went to buy a bookcase for $40. The seller had it waiting outside and it looked exactly like the photos. I took out the cash and suddenly the seller frowned. They said the price had gone up because now that I was here, they realised I really wanted it. They literally changed the listing price in front of me on their phone and claimed they had to honour the updated market value. I told them I was fine walking away. They panicked and dropped it back to 40. Then 35. Then 40 again. At that point, I wasn't even sure they understood money anymore. I got in my car and left the bookcase sitting there like it was part of a psychological experiment. Story 15. I went to buy a gaming chair listed as perfect condition. When I got there, the chair was sitting on the porch tilted to one side like it was drunk. The seller insisted it was just the angle of the photo, but in person the chair leaned so far left it felt like it was trying to escape. I sat in it for a second just to test it, and the entire thing wobbled like a carnival ride, missing half its bolts. The seller said the wobble was part of the ergonomic design, and that leaning helps activate your core. I told him that the only thing this chair was activating was a chiropractor bill. He kept insisting people pay extra for active seating, so I let him keep his extremely active chair. Story 16. I tried buying a blender for $20. The seller greeted me at the door holding it like it was a priceless relic. The base was clean and the buttons worked, but the top was missing the entire lid. When I asked about it, she said she lost it years ago, but that real chefs don't need lids anyway. She said the key is confidence, and that if I held a towel over it while blending, everything would be fine. I asked if it came with any replacement parts. She said no, then tried upselling me a random plastic container from her kitchen that she claimed might fit if you push hard enough. I told her I preferred appliances that don't require prayer to operate. Story 17. I messaged about a laptop listed for $200. The pictures looked old but acceptable for basic use. When I got there, the laptop took almost 2 full minutes just to open a folder. The fan sounded like a hairdryer set to maximum. I asked if it always ran that loud, and he told me it was a performance raw and proof that the laptop was doing its best. He tried to convince me that slow computers are actually safer because hackers don't have the patience to wait. I thanked him for the cybersecurity lecture and left before the laptop caught fire from trying to load the settings. Menu. Story 18. I answered a listing for a barely used treadmill. When I arrived, the seller led me into his garage, where the treadmill was buried under boxes, clothes, and what looked like an old Christmas tree. He dug it out and plugged it in, and the belt started moving in violent little jerks, like it was trying to buck someone off. He said it just needed to warm up. After 2 minutes of spasming, it shut off completely. He shrugged and said that meant the motor was resting. I told him resting usually happens after working, not instead of it. He insisted it worked fine last year, and I told him so did my New Year's resolutions. Story 19. I went to buy a dining table listed as solid oak, handcrafted, heirloom quality. The price was suspiciously high, but the photos looked good, so I figured I'd at least take a look. The seller met me in his garage, where the table was positioned dramatically under a single dangling light bulb. It looked nothing like the pictures. Half the surface was warped, one leg was shorter than the others, and there was a giant burn mark in the middle, like someone had left a hot pan on it for an hour. I pointed out the burn and he said it added character. I pointed out the warped top and he said that made it rustic. I pointed out the uneven legs and he said that gave it personality. He kept renaming every flaw like he was rebranding a failing product. When I mentioned the price, he insisted it was fair because it had generations of potential. Not generations of history, generations of future people who could fix it. According to him, I wasn't buying the table, I was buying the privilege of restoring it across multiple lifetimes. I told him I wasn't starting a family tree with a piece of furniture, and he told me some people lack vision. Story 20. I answered a listing for a bicycle described as fast, reliable, ready to ride. The seller told me to meet him at a park, which was already weird because most people sell bikes at their house. When I got there, he arrived riding the bike. At first I thought, good, at least it works, but then I noticed he wasn't sitting on the seat. He was hovering above it, legs stiff, trying to balance. When he stopped, I saw why. The seat was completely missing, just a metal pole, sticking straight up like a medieval torture device. I asked what happened to the seat, and he said he took it off because serious cyclists don't rely on comfort. I told him humans have bones that do. He tried to convince me that riding without a seat builds discipline, and that the metal pole guides proper posture. Then he turned the bike around to show me the back tyre, which was thinner on one side from uneven wear. When I asked about it, he said the tyre had a preferred direction, as if the bike had developed personal preferences. I told him none of this matched the listing. He said everything was accurate because the bike technically did move when pedalled. Not well, not safely, and not sanely, but it moved. I let him ride away on his seatless warrior bicycle and wished him luck with his posture training. Make sure you like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video.